Welcome. In this edition, I'm pleased to welcome back Dr. Joy DeGruy, who has attained national acclaim for her research and lectures on post-traumatic slave syndrome. We'll get started right after this. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
It's been a spate of time since we first met electronically and socially, and I was just wondering, you rose to fame arguing very effectively and persuasively about the impact of post-traumatic slave syndrome and how it's affected us today. What is your report card on national awareness today, as you see it, on this issue?
I think, I think it's growing. I think there's certainly an awareness of it on a general level. But on a specific level, I think there is just as much avoidance as there's always been, you know. So I think in terms of the African American community, people of color, there's a growing knowledge, a growing understanding. I just did some work in Alaska with Tlingit Native people, and real, very strong connection with the impact of course, multi-generational impact of colonialism on Native people. And so I think people of color in general kind of are getting this more, but not probably where you think they should get it, which is like in school. That's not where it's showing up.
There's no noticeable change in the quality of curriculum, as you've seen?
Well, probably no, I would say no, there isn't. I'm trying to think about it.
You know the name of the program.
What you want to say?
Like it is.
Just tell it like it is. And as it relates to primary school, high schools, I think that actually it may in some cases be going backwards. Particularly if you look at what's happening in Texas, and you look at the whole industry of looking at textbooks and what they're placing in them and what they're taking out. One of the things that has been passed, and people just kind of came and went, because Texas is huge as it relates to textbooks, and most school systems utilize these because they're less expensive because they're so large. And one of the things that they're doing now is they're increasing knowledge about, for example, the Confederacy, and including not just Lincoln's speech, but the speech of, you know, his opponent, who was part of the Confederacy, and beginning to honor and acknowledge the heroes of the Confederacy. And this is a very interesting thing. That's not going to happen. That's already happened. And less about Thomas Jefferson, more, I mean, just very interestingly how these things are changing and presenting a picture that is in fact distorted. And when we look at that in relationship to things like what's going on in Arizona, folks are being carted, we're going backwards, and in a scary way, because if you look at that from a very specific level, how would the Jewish community, for example, here in New York, respond to a month to acknowledge German soldiers who fought and died, lost their lives, but we're going to honor them now, whose express purpose was to exterminate Jewish people? How then do we reconcile honoring those of the Confederacy who, if they could have, would have maintained slavery? We get to do that. It becomes a discussion. Matter of fact, you know, it's certainly not even probably up for debate at this point. We are seeing that is backwards. So now folks are being asked to present cards to show whether or not they belong here. And we are looking at curricular materials that want to honor people who wanted to keep people permanently enslaved. That would suggest something that looks like apartheid and something that looks like Nazi Germany. Now, again, how is it gets to be okay when it comes to people of African descent? That becomes a question, because I could be very clear with you here. Jewish people are not having that. You are not going to honor German soldiers, despite the fact that there is no confusion around the fact that many, many died. The point is that that was a horrific crime against humanity, as was slavery based on the International Tribunal. So we are in a place where the denial is meeting head on with fear. And the fear, again, is something being generated by the lack of resources. And when you start looking at the lack of resources in America, people start behaving very oddly, very, very insanely. And so I think we're in trouble when it comes to this.
There are those who will say, but now, look who's in the White House.
Okay.
You know, how can you say that things are not moving forward?
Okay, so here's what I usually do. What's so wonderful about this time is I just finished a 10-week course, a graduate course on my book and on my study guide. And I start off my class, even before I show up, I ask a question, because I'm going to answer that question about Barack Obama being in the White House. I asked a question about racism, so let's cut to the chase. Let's talk about white privilege. Let's talk about white supremacy and racism, right? We really can't avoid that conversation if we're going to talk about post-traumatic. So my graduate students, I give them a question before they even show up for the first class with me. And I ask them about racism and their definition. And we understand on a general level that racism is a system of advantage based on race, right? And so I ask them a question, can black people be racist? And I ask them a question, can white people be racist? And then I have them have a discussion about that before I show up. This is just to basically figure out whether or not you're ready to even engage my classroom. So I come back to the class the first day, they having had, major stuff around that. So I said, I don't answer it for them. I don't answer it. I said, you're going to answer it. So I asked them, I'm going to have two columns. The first column is going to be white racism. Is everybody clear that there's white racism? Whole class, regardless of race, raise your hand. Mm-hmm. So, okay, so we're going to put white racism. I said, I want you to tell me how white racism adversely impacts the lives of black people as an entire group of people. And people start yelling out answers. Housing, yes, health care, criminal justice, jobs, right? It goes on and on. Thank you so very much. So I've accumulated a list. I said, now we're going to talk about black racism. And I need you to tell me, and I want you to tell me very clearly, how black racism adversely impacts the lives of white people as an entire group of people.
The response?
There is none. And the reason why there isn't one, and there's disturbance over it. They're going, but my uncle, once he didn't get a job, I said, well, you mean a white person? I said, because let's get all 12% of the black folks. Let's get them all. Every single black man, woman, child. Let's just say they said, I hate you, hate you, hate you. Is it going to change your ability to get the loan? Is it in any way going to block your ability to enter the school of your choice? So you see, no matter what you say, you have to understand it is a system of advantage based on race. And so based on, even if we say we all hated you, that's not the point. Can I then affect an entire group of people with that hatred? That's the difference. So you have someone like Barack Obama, President Barack Obama, in the White House. But we have not changed disproportionality. It does not change the police use of deadly force. It does not change the disparities in health and economics. None of that has changed. But you do, in fact, have an African-American man in the White House. So I think that what happens is there's such a desire to go, okay, so now we're done. Now the playing field is somehow leveled. And that's simply not true. It's not emotional. I'm not trying to be harsh. It's simply not true. Count and measure it.
You know what? We got to take a break. Doctors, in treating an analogy or a malady that you may have, understand the importance of knowing your medical case history. Does the same analogy apply for being a citizen in any environment, to know the case history of the environment? In other words, is black history, to be blunt about it, included adequately in the curriculum in this country, as you see it?
Has not been, never has been, and isn't today. No, it is not adequately being. And the reason why this becomes very clear, one of the things that's so wonderful about teaching this course, this graduate course at Portland State, is the ability to take a look at things, first of all, over 10 weeks, and to allow graduate students to do research. What I wanted my students to do, for example, was to evaluate, one of their final actual paper was to evaluate 2 programs in the United States that are specifically designed for African Americans, that either deals with education and an increase in closing the achievement gap, looking at reentry, folks that, programs that are helping folks re-enter into the community who have been involved in criminal justice or in the criminal system, and to look at issues around programs that are effectively helping folks around health disparities. Those were the 3 areas, and this could be individuals or families.